2 weeks in a row, two heroic efforts against two title contenders. Are the Magpies all that good? Are we all that we now think we are? Or are honourable losses just that, still losses? And after all this, after all that effort, after all that work, teams are in no change. Is it the right call? So much conjecture. Magpie Girl, how are you tonight?
I am fantastic, thanks, Mighty Two.
Did you enjoy the game?
Oh, yeah. God, it was brilliant. I was there. I was sitting in the lower stand of the Ponsford, hear the bodies clashing. And it was a great game of football. Seesawing, tight, tense, had everybody screaming out, telling them all what to do and why you're doing that. And it was just a fantastic game of football.
It was beautiful, wasn't it? I've got to say, I didn't get down to the game. I was celebrating my birthday, and come the fourth quarter, I was about 15 Jaeger bombs down and a couple of dozen vodkas, and didn't quite know where I was, but I was enjoying the game. And I've watched it back on replay. Yeah, look, the effort was out of this world. But I know that I've got Gone Critical's voice just in my ear, buzzing from behind, just whispering that but we didn't win, and can't rest on our laurels. And this, I'll take the aura of Gone Critical, and I'll agree with him, because whilst it was an amazing effort, whilst such a powerful thing to see such a group of young kids really gel together and push this champion football side like Hawthorn to the limit. Whilst that's such an amazing image, something that we can really look back on, you can't look back on it too fondly because it was still a loss. And it kind of leads us to...
but. Look, I ended up sitting with Vicky Park for the last quarter, and and she said to me, well, I'm really disappointed that we lost, but I am so proud of them for only losing by 10 points. This is the first time we've lost by less than 40 points, in the last 4 years. So, I mean, and that last quarter where we were seesawing, and look, they just broke. The pressure just got to them again in those last few minutes. But boy, I honestly went to that game thinking that Hawthorn would murder us.
Yep.
And it was such a fantastic game.
Can I say, I agree with you completely. Such a heroic effort. And even at the point when Hawthorn kicked that goal to go, I think it was 16 points up in the last quarter, I actually brought the entire bar around because I was so proud. And I was also so drunk, but I was also really proud. And I do hold on to that. It's a platform. And I think that the club and the players should now look at that and say, damn it, we could have beaten these guys, we didn't, but this is our baseline now. This is what we have to show against these guys consistently. We're going to come up against a very emotional Port Adelaide side this week. A team that really needs a win for a variety of reasons. So the pressure's going to be up again. Before we get to our lovely South Australian cousins, did you manage to brave the cold for the VFL game this week, Magpie Girl? Because I got there for about a quarter and a half, and it was Baltic.
I was looking for you.
I bolted.
To be there. You bolted.
I bolted.
I stayed to the bitter end, and I have to say I was suffering from brain freeze. So cold.
I got there at the end of the first quarter. I stayed for about a quarter and a half, and then because of my old age, my knee started playing up. So I just thought, make for the exits and the warmth of a fireplace.
Well, you might have seen my little message on the game day thread, but I actually sat next to Jordan De Goey and his dad for a quarter.
I did read that afterwards. What was that like?
Oh, well, it was. I was just sitting there, and suddenly these two people sat down next to me, and I'm sort of looking, and I'm thinking, I think this might be Jordan De Goey, and I wasn't quite brave enough to sort of say it, straight out. Then I realised it really was him. So I don't know, you just don't want to say hi, ask some question, but I don't know. I sort of started up something, and the next thing we were just chatting away, and look, he's. I just admire the players so much. They give so much time to all the kids that come up to them. That they never hesitate to, write their autographs and joke with the kids. And as soon as somebody realised, one of the kids realised who it was, they all started lining up. And his dad was a great guy, and it was just really friendly and lovely. So
he seems like such a level-headed kid. I'm guessing that really came across when you had a chat with him.
Yeah. Because it was such a horrible cold, wet day. I said to him, "Do you like playing in the wet weather?" Expecting him to say no. He said, "Yeah, I love it. Love it." Yeah. Love the unpredictability of it. Love the bodies all, banging into each other and going everywhere, and just loves the hard contest. So
he just reminds me so much of Bucks, just a competitive animal who just wants to get out there and play. So, look, I like the kid a lot. I like the cut of his jib, so to speak. But yeah, that was really nice. I'm glad you had the chance to chat with him.
Yeah. I'm just sorry I didn't whip my phone out and record the interview. Could have.
Yeah, exactly right.
Exclusive.
two exclusives in a week. Speaking of which, what did you think of the Taylor Adams interview?
Oh, it was terrific. Thank you. That was a really good job. Yeah.
Now, all the thanks has to go to you, Magpie Girl, obviously, for organising it and making sure that we get access to these sorts of figures. We've got a nice little haul now so far of staff and players alike. So let's hope we can keep adding a few of these exclusives and these interviews to our list. And
kudos to the club for giving us access, which is great.
Absolutely. Let's get into this week's game, and let's introduce Fishing Rick, who will be our guest this week from the Port Adelaide board. Rick, how you doing today?
Yeah, very good, mate. What about you?
Look, it's been a long day. It's been a long week since Friday night, as you can imagine. It was a bit of a tough loss of the Hawks, but you move on from these sorts of things. Tell me a bit about Port this year. That they seem to be one of the real stories, even though it's not quite dominating the headlines over here. The fall from essentially fourth to currently sitting outside the 8 has been dramatic, and one that wasn't expected by me.
Well, you could almost call it the fall from grace, couldn't you? I mean, we were the poster child for the last 2 years of the AFL, and the shining light of recovery from being on the bones of our bum to making that preliminary final and almost knocking off Hawthorn. It's I think a lot of the supporters, including myself, were all very perplexed to what's happened, and none of us have really got a definite answer to what's happened. So, it doesn't help you guys, I guess, but your guess could almost be as good as ours because the team hasn't really changed. We've had a couple of injuries, but every team has injuries. So unless you like Gold Coast, where you've got 16 injuries on your playing roster, 2 or 3 injuries really doesn't cut it as an excuse for not being able to perform. So we just seem to be very disjointed this year. We seem to be lacking a little bit of tactical nous, and obviously Phil Walsh passed away last week, which was horrendous. But there has been questions: have we been missing Phil Walsh's influence this year? And questions have been raised on Michael Voss. Is he up to the challenge? And but now, as results continue not to go our way, the selections are becoming more and more controversial on a weekly basis.
If I'm going to make an observation about, from my rudimentary understanding of Port Adelaide's game plan and the way that you guys go about your football, even last year, Port seemed to play a bit on a knife edge. Very dangerous ball moving side, but the kicks are generally into very dangerous spots. And when there's a turnover, you seem to get scored on quite heavily. Now, last season, you were able to score in bunches with a huge wave of momentum, with some really attractive football, really, really pretty football, and caught a lot of teams off guard. Has there been a working out phase? I mean, is it just a case of, because the targets you were hitting last year, that don't seem to be coming off this year?
I think it even goes further. Well, it goes further than that, but our disposal efficiency has been deplorable. We've been the Carlton game in the second quarter. I think we ran in the 30% region. You're not going to win a game of lower league football, SANFL standard or VFL standard, let alone AFL standard, running at those figures. And then again, second quarter of Sydney, we ran in the 50% disposal efficiency percentage. So again, that's one area that's letting us down. I'd also argue that the teams it's probably not hitting the targets, but I think the teams have really been able to curtail our attacking flair and our run and carry. And they've been able to create more stagnant football with the Port Adelaide Football Club, which has been to our detriment because obviously with modern AFL, slow stagnant football allows the opposition to sort of flood back and obviously get numbers behind the ball, clog up the space, and then that makes it almost impossible for delivery. So I think there has been an element of worked out, but I think it's also the players have probably worked themselves over a little bit mentally and they're sort of a bit confused in the game plan. That's how it comes across to me.
Talk me through some of these changes. They seem a little bit, what's the right word, controversial. And is it a bit of a knee-jerk reaction? What's the thought coming from the Port Adelaide side of the fence?
Yeah, look, there's a few players that probably that supporters are happy to be omitted for one reason or another. Alapati Carlisle, if we take it on face value that he was injured, well then he needs to be rested because he had 4 goals kicked on him last week. He's been trailing the defenders for a few weeks now, the forwards, and getting some goals kicked on him, which is a bit of a shame because in the first 5 rounds he was in All-Australian form or up there with All-Australian form. So I think he's been carrying an injury since he missed a couple of games and his form hasn't been the same. Andrew Moore, he's been in and out of the AFL side. This year he got that, I don't know if you guys saw it over there, he got that suspension for pushing an umpire.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was a bit controversial because there was really nothing in it, and he was really just showing the umpire what he thought was happening, and he got rubbed out for 3 games. And you got Will Minson that doesn't get a game at all. But anyway, what happened is that really he had some good form coming into that, and he was probably going to be picked until that suspension. So he hasn't been the same since then. So that was another one. And then Sammy Cahoon, he's a young player, really thin. So you can see that one. So the 2 controversial ones, I guess, is Tom Jonas, who was one of the form players of the last 2 years. That's in the leadership group of Port Adelaide. Ken Hinkley really rolled with him for a long period of time. But his form has been pretty average, and so finally they bit the bullet and actually and clipped him. So that was coming. I was asking for it for the last 3 weeks. His form's been that bad, and he's a great player when he's in form. And every player goes through form patches, and there's nothing wrong with being dropped for form and coming back. And Nathan Cracker's been the most controversial one out of that one. So I don't know how many games you guys have seen of us, but Nathan's been sort of the Cinderella story this year for Port Adelaide and making it back onto the list and then being upgraded from the rookie spot, and he's played pretty well. And I think there's been question marks from where he's come from with his fitness, and that's exposing him at times during games. But his skill level he's probably the best skilled player in our team at this point in time. So Ken Hinkley came out after selections and said that there's just a few things he needs to work on. I would imagine that's probably his defensive efforts. There was probably a few defensive efforts over the last few weeks that probably weren't up to scratch, and I'd imagine that's what they're probably going to ask him to go away and work on.
It is fascinating because, as you say, there's certainly been a bit of a visible lack in skill or polish in the team. Cracker seems to have had an impact, even when he's gone slightly across the half-forward line. I think it was a couple of weeks ago when some of his delivery inside 50 was pinpoint. So it is a strange decision. A couple of handy ins, though. Jackson Tringo comes in. I like the look of Cam O'Shea. I'm curious about Tom Cleary. He was only drafted 2 or 3 years ago, I believe, as a key position defender out of the under-18s. How has he developed, and what sort of role is he likely to play this week?
Yeah, look, he'll probably play the third man up role, so he'll probably get you third or fourth. Well, he'll probably get you third best defender. So who would that be on your list? It would obviously Travis Cloke and Jesse White would probably be your top two.
Probably
So
end up being someone like young Darcy Moore this week.
yeah, how tall's Darcy?
200 and something centimetres.
Yeah, well, that could work to your advantage. I think Tom Cleary's 191, maybe 193 max.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could generate a mismatch for you guys because Jack Homsch, who's been in fantastic form, is 193, and Jackson, I think, is 197 or 198. So yeah, look, Tom Cleary will play that third defender, and he's been okay. I think he's played 2 or 3 games this year, and he had 1 game in the previous year, and he's got a massive tank on him, which I guess is pretty cliche for AFL teams these days. Everyone's got a massive tank, but he's always high on the in our 3K time trial. So, and some supporters were keen to see him run through the midfield. So, yeah, but I think you could have an advantage with height, depending on how Darcy plays.
I think that's part of the reason why he's been left in the side because he didn't have an amazing game. Magpie girl, I'll defer to your wisdom in a second on what you thought about that. But I think looking to try and expose Port a little bit in height, what did you think of the lack of changes? I guess Magpie girl. It's we've gone 2 big games in a row against 2 huge opposition. Came up short both times. No change. Were you expecting it?
Well, I think it was a tremendously courageous move to put Darcy Moore in last week. And I think it's good that they're sticking with him this week. Obviously we need that third tall, and it's good for him to get the experience and the confidence. And he was a little bit lost out there last Friday night, but he did a few things. I mean, he's one fantastic spoil, really, kind of made his night, really, but came along at a very appropriate time. And, I think he's the sort of guy that will grow in confidence pretty quickly. So
I think you're right. I think even before just before he got subbed, he was kind of building into the game. He looked, a big mark or 2 away from really having an impact. Again, he's an 18, 19-year-old kid with a big frame, still trying to grow into his body. And I'm certainly a fan of keeping. I don't know what your thoughts are about this, but I'm a big fan of keeping young guys in the side. I don't like consistently changing, bringing a debutant in and then getting a straight drop to the VFL, pat on the back, good job, but we'll see you in a few weeks. So I think it's going to...
The thing is that if there's a clear position for them, and I mean, there's not a lot of people vying for the spot that Darcy Moore's taking. Whose spot would he be taking?
Well, it's probably Brodie Grundy, and Grundy's flown over with the team.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, certainly last week, this week, there's a clear spot for him, whereas you look at, someone like Ben Kennedy that everybody would like to see get a few consistent games. There are a lot more players playing his kind of game. It's a bit harder for him to hold a spot and get a consistent run.
Well, speaking of consistency or inconsistency in this case, despite how inconsistent Port have been this year, I still get the feeling, Rick, that you guys are going to come up and really push us for it, whether it's an emotional response to the tragic loss of Phil Walsh, but basically just because I think Port are due. I think they're due for a big game. It's something that has to go right at some point, and it could be this week with where all the stars aligned.
I'm not convinced on that, to be honest. I actually have picked Port, but I've only picked Port because I think they might rise to the emotional challenge with Phil Walsh. I think the Crows obviously are going to have a lot more difficulty because he was in their group, whereas Phil had left us. So, but yeah, I think that might be the reason. But I'm looking at your side, and even though Darcy Moore's young, Travis Cloke's a big fella as well, Jesse White. then when you add that in with Jamie Elliott and Blair, you've got a fantastic forward line, and your small forwards could maybe potentially expose our small forwards. We're probably still trying to develop that small lockdown defender. So I would be, if I was a Magpies supporter, really interested in watching Jamie Elliott and Jared Blair's performance this week, because I think they could do some damage. And we're having our wet spell now. We haven't had rain for probably 2 months, and it started raining this week. So you might find that you guys might even drop a big man and bring in a Ben Kennedy. Because I'm going to imagine it's going to be probably a dewy game, a slippery game. So maybe a Darcy Moore could be sacrificed. If that was the case, would you pinch hit maybe with Jesse White in the ruck?
I think that'll be the case. I think that's how it would work out, and White would end up playing through the ruck, giving Witts a bit of relief. But it's something that it's a difficult proposition, because Lobby and Ryder are both very capable, very athletic ruckmen. I actually think Lobby's improved quite a lot in that department. But we're certainly going into the game then with a significant disadvantage in the ruck. But where we've been able to make up for that disadvantage, especially in the Freo game, I think we've been harder at the ball, the clearances. So the midfield battle becomes absolutely pivotal, because we've become quite a strong clearance team and quite a strong pressure team through the centre. So we're certainly going to match up quite well.
I notice, what's your game plan been this year? I sort of caught a little bit with the Collingwood Hawthorn game, and it seemed to be a massive numbers, sort of a 60-metre zone around the person with the ball, especially when it's in the half back line. Has that been sort of a regular sort of pattern of play for Collingwood this year?
Is that a question the coach asked you to ask?
No, why is that? What have I missed?
You want to know our game plan?
It's just, I mean, I guess the tactics and structure of AFL football is something I like to watch and keep. It's sort of my hobby, I guess. And yeah, look, I actually don't, regardless of Port winning or not, I've found the quality of AFL football this year very difficult to watch. Yeah, it seems to be, to me, accentuated that it's like mini league this year. Just run so many numbers around the ball, and it's not funny. And it's amazing that the league has seemed to have responded to trying to negate Port Adelaide style of run and carry game when we haven't even won the grand final. And then you got repeat teams like Hawthorn, Sydney and Freo that seem to be flying under the radar, and everyone's sort of focused on, hey, we've got to stop Port Adelaide. What about the juggernaut of Hawthorn in Sydney? It's quite interesting. But yeah, it just seems to be this mass flood around the ball, and it's very congested, and yeah, it's not a very attractive brand that teams are playing at the moment.
And can I say, before I get on to talking about Collingwood's game plan very briefly, it's going to get worse to watch. Bringing the rotations down to 80 means teams will start conserving players a lot more. You're going to see a lot more scrums, a lot more very, very, very easy out the back door sort of goals, breaking away from the space. And as Laurie informs me, and he's quite right, the under-18s are playing such an attractive brand of football because it's such a one-on-one style. And it's showing. It's actually showing to be quite a great way to watch football.
What rule changes did they make to try and free it up?
I'm trying to remember exactly, but it's essentially it resulted in implementation of a very one-on-one style of gameplay. So you see genuine contests. You see which you just don't get anymore. I don't see any entertainment in seeing a guy break away from a pack and slot one in from 45 uncontested, especially when, down the other end it's a 3-on-1 marking contest and the forward has no chance at it. So, it's going to get worse before it gets better. On Collingwood's game plan, I think the key to our identity this year has been effort, perseverance and hardness at the ball. A lot of blue-collar players really working into the pack and trying to get the ball free. Quick movement by hand, especially out of the back line, which kind of catches opponents out. And it's very different from the way that Hawthorn and Freo sort of chip around the ball. Same with the Swans. So that's probably been the hallmark. I think the one criticism on us has been in the times that we've been conceding goals at a rapid rate, we've been a bit slow to respond, and that I think has caught us out a couple of times. The Geelong game, the Richmond game, so. It's going to be it's interesting to see how the team's developing going forward because we do have players that play quite a good contested brand of football.
Yeah. Well, look, I think you guys match up really well. You've got a decent midfield and you've got a great forward line, and you've got good versatility in your forward line. So I would be, and you guys are in form. And I think a few of our supporters keep holding out hope that Port Adelaide's going to play 2014 form, and we really haven't done that since round 5. So I think you guys are right in it with a shot, and I know I wouldn't, if I was a Collingwood supporter, I would get in on the bookies at your odds. I think you guys are great value to win this game, and it hates me more than anyone to say it, but I'm a realist. But I think it'll be entertaining, and for those who make it over and they haven't been Adelaide Oval before, you're going to love it. The atmosphere is fantastic, and I'm sure both teams are going to do Phil Walsh, his legacy proud. I mean, he had a bit of a Collingwood connection too, didn't he?
Yeah.
22 games, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think both teams aren't running out to their song this week, and I don't believe there's a banner either. Is that right?
They are playing the Port song before the game, but there's no banners, I don't think.
No, I think they might play the Never Tear Us Apart, where the supporters hold up the scarves, but I'm pretty sure neither team's going to do the theme song. But I'm happy to stand corrected on that one.
No, you're right. It is the Never Tear Us Apart. I always think of that one as the Port song, actually.
Yeah. So have you guys been to Adelaide Oval for a game?
No, I haven't.
I haven't been for a game. I was in Adelaide actually 2 weeks ago, and I got to see the ground. And it's an impressive sight to behold, I must say. Unfortunately, went to a Sturt game later that weekend. That's beside the point. So I certainly wouldn't have minded getting down. Just couldn't find the time away. But it is a beautiful stadium, and I thoroughly enjoy watching Port there. The Never Tear Us Apart actually it just adds so much atmosphere, and I really quite like it as an initiative and a great idea by the football club because it certainly added a lot to it. So very impressive.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully maybe it evolving where it can be like the EPL where we don't actually need the music played and the supporters just sing it. I think if we can transition it to that over time, then it'll be one of those spine-tingling moments in sport. But I guess my tip for you guys in the game, if you like watching the opposition side, he's one of my favourite players at the moment. Would be check out Brendan Archie. He played 3 games as a sub, and then had his first full game against Sydney last week, and picked up nearly 20 possessions, kicked a goal. But I'm putting him up there as having a ham for after 4 games. It's a big call, but I reckon he's got a handball as good as Greg Williams. I know it's a massive, massive call, but he does not miss with his handball. And in one of the sub games, I can't remember who it was now, he pretty much did a 35-metre handball from pretty much a stationary start, hit the player on the run, on the chest. And some of his handballs last week were just amazing. He's still got a long way to go as a footy player, but he's an exciting player to watch. And he's got the confidence. Sometimes these young boys sort of sit back and they sort of leave the ball for the name players, your Dane Swan or your Scott Pendlebury or Travis Boak and sort of stay out of the way. You don't want to interfere with them. But he's got that confidence there now where he just goes, okay, I'll see the ball, I'm going to go get it. He doesn't pay attention to who's there. So my tip for you guys would be keep an eye out for Archie. I reckon he'll have a good game.
What number is he?
41, I think.
41, yeah.
And where does he play?
On the bench. But no, you'll see. But you'll see him rotate through the midfield.
Yeah.
And probably the half forward line. But he'll be involved in the midfield rotations.
Yeah. We should also mention that it's Swanee's 250th game.
It is Swanee 250 a game, and he's always one to keep an eye out for.
That adds to the occasion, of course, which is one.
Certainly as the occasion. I do like Archie. I was a big fan of him in the under-18s, and actually it's his brother, I think, that's coming through this year. So very similarly talented. I guess for Collingwood, the main one I always like to watch or keep an eye out for is Jamie Elliott, especially just given his ability to influence a game. But the last 2 weeks he's been held fairly quiet, so it could be a really crucial part of unravelling that Collingwood forward line. Jarman Impey will have his work cut out for him, but it could be an interesting matchup. Rick, thank you so much for coming on. I will let you go as we apparently dragged on quite a bit.
No, you're right. It's my bad influence. Our Port podcast usually goes for an hour. So
if I had my way, Rick, this thing wouldn't stop, and we just keep going because it's I do thoroughly enjoy a good awesome footy chat.
No, well, I hope I've added some insight for you, and good luck, and not too much luck on tomorrow night. I was going to say on the weekend.
Yeah, definitely. And look, whilst it may be perhaps in your mind a little bit unlikely this year, I certainly hope to see the real Port Adelaide or the Port Adelaide of last year show up again. You were the only team aside from Collingwood that I could actively watch last year and enjoy. So my football watching has been a bit disappointing this year, I must say. But certainly hope you guys find those heights again, and maybe with a bit of luck we might see you in September.
Good luck. Cheers, guys.
Take care, Rick.
Really.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Always good having a member of the opposition on, and thanks again to Fishing Rick for coming on and giving us such a valuable insight into the Port Adelaide Football Club. We are running short on time, so Magpie Girl, I'd like to thank you for all your efforts in coming on today.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Mighty T, and we'll send a cheerio to Gone Critical, shall we, who's over there hugging gorillas or something.
Yeah, he's absolutely killing it over in Africa. So is it Africa?
No, I hope he's not doing that.
No, not literally. But
it's not very politically correct anymore.
No, let me rephrase it. I'm sure he's having a great time in Africa at the moment, and I'm sure he'll be back soon enough. Thanks again, Laurie, for all your help and your ad-libbing and your typing in the background. We always appreciate it. And just a couple of shout-outs before we finish up, but please stay tuned for TD and his rant. Always valued listening. One final shout-out to Dane Swan. Congratulations on 250. Do us all a favour and re-sign so you can get to 300, because we all know you can do it and you're just a superstar. And finally, our thoughts and prayers are with the Adelaide Football Club, West Coast Football Club and Port Adelaide Football Club this week, who will all be feeling the loss of Phil Walsh after his untimely death on Friday, which has obviously shaken the AFL world to its core. I'm led to believe that the Collingwood and Port Adelaide Football Club won't be coming out to their songs and to a banner this week as a show of respect. So our thoughts and prayers go out to those players in Perth this week, representing the Adelaide Football Club and the West Coast Football Club, for the club at which he was an assistant for a fair period of time, and also to our opposition, Port Adelaide, this week. And I'm sure all the boys will do Phil proud. This is the Mighty T signing out.
Okay, this is TradeDraft's round 15 rant, and I want to talk about our goal kicking, because we have played arguably the top two teams in the competition this year in Fremantle and Port Adelaide. And both games we have found ourselves in very winnable situations late in the game. And especially Fremantle, because we can all remember that the Jesse Wright miss in the last quarter was an absolute shocker. But then again, the Fremantle's goal kicking, the whole game wasn't terrible because we kicked 11-7. But when it came to pressure time late in the game, we missed crucial goals. Very, very crucial goals. Because it's the game. But then we have a look at, but it really showed up. The fourth quarter form changed into The whole game was randomly kicked 12-19. 12-19, that is just pathetic. Especially for a top team, because Clyde kicked, I think it was 1-4, 1-5. And for a guy who's getting paid $800,000 a year, you are there to be a match winner. I know people who said he'll sign to be a part of a winning team. That's true, but he's there as part of to be a match winner for that money. If you're just playing to winning, if you could play for getting $500,000 or less, maybe even $600,000, but $700,000, $800,000. He's on that, but you're playing as being there as a match winner. And yes, Clyde can be a match winner when he kicks straight, which is maybe not very often at all. But when he does, he can just never be a match winner. But when he isn't, he can be a match loser because the team is very much kicking a Clyde. And when he gets the mark, they start shaking it, which is not good enough. So hopefully he does come fixing it, or if not, we're going to lose a lot more games like that. Okay, and I'll just run this up, and I'll see you for round 15 rant. I mean, the round 16 rant. So I hope you enjoy my little rant, and I'll see you next week.
Excellent, thank you.